Hi, it's Xavier here. I'm just going to do a quick play guide on the new comms menus. This is an update that I've been working on over the past few days, and I think I've got it finished and ready to go, so I wanted to do a quick play guide on how they all work. If you've looked at comms menus before, it won't look like much has changed because you've still got the ship names that are spawned. On my right hand small screen there, you can see the three ships that are currently active: the Necessity, the Sabre and the Horizon. And on the left you can see the comms menu with the three buttons: the Sabre, the Horizon and Necessity. If there was another ship spawned, say the Viper, that comms menu button would be added into the list as well. The reason why I've reworked the comms buttons is because we wanted to add fighter complements to ships that were AI controlled. So ships can now have a fighter complement added, and then they can launch them in a fighter wing and recall them in a fighter wing. With the extra functions and having comms launch them and recall them, I needed to take another look at how the comms buttons worked, and took the opportunity to basically rewrite how they worked and the kind of menu structure. So all the comms buttons are displayed to every ship all the time. If you're on the comms menu, you'll see what the Sabre's doing, what the Horizon's doing, what the Necessity's doing. So only one comms officer can really access them at a time. Otherwise, you're going to end up with crossover interference and things. Hopefully, it's all really nice and clear. For example, if I go into the TSN Sabre comms menu, you can see that it tells me that I'm in the TSN Sabre menu, and then it gives me the options. We'll go through this menu very quickly. So the first option, the TSN Sabre menu button doesn't do anything. It's just there to tell you which menu you're in. The first button, back, obviously takes you back to that main menu. It's the same with the other ship menus as well. After that, there are several different buttons below. The first one is Marine Status. If you click that, it will give you a report on the status of TSN Sabre's Marine complement. So if I click on that, you can see up here, it gives you a report on how many battle-ready Marines there are. That works for boarding actions, so you can track how many Marines there are. I'm also going to look at linking it in with shuttle operations at some point, so when you launch your shuttle loaded with a Marine team, that reduces as well. Going back to this, obviously if I ever go to the Horizon and click Horizon, then it just gives me Horizon's Marine status, 20 battle-ready Marines, and the same with Necessity. So every ship has that function. The next one is Shuttle Operations. These next three buttons actually take you into a separate menu. So for example, if I click on Shuttle Operations, it brings up all the things to do with shuttles. So I can get the status of the shuttle aboard the Sabre, then I can decide whether to unload it or load it with one of these different types of cargo, and these all correspond to the rendezvous points that you might get. So when a rendezvous point appears, you can tell which one it is by science clicking on it and having a look at what rendezvous point it is, and then you can load up the required cargo for that rendezvous point. If I just click on the first one, shuttle status, it goes back to the main menu again, but you see in the comms for TSN Sabre it says there's no cargo aboard. I can go back here, I could load up one of these, team of Marines, some cargo, a medical team, an engineering team, or a comms relay or a sensor boy. So I'm going to load up a medical team, and it goes through a couple of things before it's fully loaded. So you get the order received message saying that it's being loaded. That's just like a confirmation that it's actually doing something. And then you've got another status message that tells you that they're on board and standing by. Now when I go back to the shuttle status, it tells me what's actually loaded, so it tells me that it's loaded with medic team. Again, I could go back, I could unload the shuttle. I've got to unload it before I can load something else in. So for example, if I try loading an engineering team, it says that the cargo is already full, and it gives you a pop-up message as well. So that's the shuttle operations. I'm just going to unload the shuttle there. And again, that's accessible on every ship. So this is the TSN Horizon menu, and I can unload and load the shuttle on the Horizon, and it will load that specific shuttle, which in this case is the Theseus, and it tells me all the status reports just for that one. And the same with Necessity. and any other ship that you spawn. So for example, if the Viper was there, I'd have the same for the Viper. Next is resupply operations. Now resupply operations are active when there's a supply ship in the area. So there are currently 3 supply ships. There's the Grant, the Djinn, and there is the Goblin as well, which is a new supply ship specifically set up to be able to resupply fighters. So if I click on that now, at the moment there's just supply update, which doesn't do anything because there are no supply ships. So there's no supply updates to read. I'm going to go and I'm going to spawn a supply ship. So if you just give me a couple of seconds, I'm going to spawn the Goblin and set it to the correct size. So let's get rid of its escorts for a start. And then, okay, so on the science screen, you can now see that I've got the Goblin spawned, which is the new supply ship. Now when I go into resupply operations, I can get a supply update, and it tells me that the supply ship has 20 homing torpedoes, 15 EMPs, and a supply of 20 fighters as well. So I can have those supplies come to my ship if I need them. If I want to resupply at the Goblin, I've got to actually be within a certain range of it. So I've got to be within 1,000, I've got to have my shields down, and I've got to be moving at impulse speed. Any of those conditions not being met will mean that I can't get any resupplies. I'm going to actually go through what the resupplies look like. So I'm going to move the Goblin a bit closer to the Saber. Alright, there we go. Now when you get within range, you get a new status message saying that the Saber's locked and it's setting up the system interface. It takes few moments, it's not instant, to make it so that the player has to hold position basically. Just while it goes through that, I'll look at the fighter operations menu as well. So if I click on that, there are several different options. There's a fighter status and there's a launch fighters. So in the fighter status, I can get the status of the fighters. So for example, the Saber has 4 out of 15 fighters standing by, and it can launch a fighter wing of 2 fighters. So if I request the launch of a fighter wing, it'll send out 2 fighters. Right. I'll come back to that launch fighter wing in a moment. Now if I go into resupply operations, you can see I've got supply update and a resupply from Goblin. You can see that Saber's only got 4 out of 15 fighters standing by, so I'm actually going to resupply from the Goblin. I'm holding position, I've got to maintain a distance of 1,000 with shields offline, and the resupply is beginning. Now to monitor the resupply, obviously the weapons officer can monitor the homing torpedoes going up and EMP torpedoes going up, and to monitor the shuttle, to monitor the fighters, I can go into the fighter operations, check fighter status, and you can see now the Saber has 15 out of 15 fighters. It doesn't happen instantly, it goes one at a time adding on, so it takes a few seconds. There's obviously been enough time since requesting it for it to be fully loaded. Alright, I think we're finished with the Goblin there. I'm going to get rid of it. There we go. Now that the Goblin's gone, obviously there's no more supply updates and there's no request to resupply from the Goblin. Okay, so looking at the fighter operations, I'm actually going to look at the necessity for this. So the necessity has a greater number of fighters that you can launch in a single wing. These are all things that can be tweaked in the script as well. So, for example, you could have 20 fighters and a wing of 10 being launched, or 8 fighters and a wing of 3 being launched at a time. Each ship can only launch one wing of fighters. So you can't launch like 4 different wings and control 4 different wings, you can only launch one. With the necessity, I've got 5 fighters in a wing, so if I go to fighter operations and click launch fighters, I'm going to actually switch to the science screen now so you can see them launching. You can see the fighter wing is called Amber for the necessity, and the fighters are launched in sequence and called number 1 to 5. The AI for the fighters needs a little bit of fine tuning, but at the moment it is possible to direct individual fighters or the whole fighter wing. So Amber 1 is the lead fighter, so I'm going to adjust that course to heading 180 and switch back here, and you can see all the other fighters are following fighter 1. If I want them to hold position, I can get it to defend fighter 2, and I know that will hold position there because it will keep them all in one place. Alright, and then if I want it moving again, I'm going to go back, I'm going to get fighter 1, and I'm going to ask it to turn to heading 270. There we go, and it's off again. Obviously with the fighters out, I want to recall them. So in the necessity menu, in fighter operations, now instead of saying launch fighter, it says recall fighters, and I can just recall it there. And the fighters receive the order and return to base. And there we go. Alright, so that's a basic outline of the comms menu. Like I say, the fighter AI code needs a little bit of tweaking, and there might be 1 or 2 other little bits in there that just need fixing. However, that's how everything is working. Oh, just one more thing. The TSN Horizon obviously still has the fighter operations, but when I click fighter status, they've got no fighters, none standing by, and they can't launch a fighter wing with any fighters. They still have the same status report, it's just that they don't have any fighters to launch. And that's everything. I hope it was interesting, I hope it was informative. If there's any new developments, again, I'll go over those as well as they come up, and hopefully create some more videos and post them. Thanks for watching.